Sand collected in under my socks and in my boots as I trudged through the desert, following a highway that was barren of any life for miles and miles. The cool wind whipped at my face, kicking up sand particles to grate against my pale skin. The moon hung in the air with stars speckling the sky in a random pattern, lighting up the sky as clouds gathered around. I breathed hard from my trek through the harsh daylight, only stopping for a snack and sweat poured down my back, forehead and chest as I lugged my backpack full of clothes and food through the thick desert sand. As the wind gusts grew stronger, I had to squint to see clearly. Specks of the sand hit my unprotected eyes, and I cursed, wiping my eyes with a grainy glove to dislodge the particles. Off in the distance, I saw the lights of a tall building. Strange. There were no cars or any civilization for over 10 miles, and yet there was a building in the middle of nowhere. Exhaustion tugged at the corners of my eyes as my breathing grew increasingly shallow. My throat screamed, and my lungs burned as I reached for my last. The plastic crunched in my hand. It was empty. I threw the bottle to the ground in frustration and kicked it away, my anger not yet spent as I stumbled to the ground. My head grew heavy, and my vision blurred as a shape approached me from the building. How had they seen me from so far away? How did they get here so quickly? The world around me went dark as my head hit the sand, my eyes fluttering shut just as the shape came. I jerked awake as the sound of a door opening woke me up from my involuntary slumber, and I sat up. I was in what looked like a hotel room on a comfortable bed, covered in warm blankets and in pajamas. Alarm shot through me as I turned in the bed to face the visitor, my hands clutching in the doorway, a feminine looking shape leaned against the doorframe, holding a candle. Not far off, I heard the ring of a bell that startled me. The shape looked at me, almost curiously as it stood up straight, and just watched me. This could be heaven or this could be hell. Suddenly, the creature lit up the candle and headed out of the room. Curious, I got out of the bed and followed, making sure I remained a safe distance away from the shape in case it decided to attack. Down the long hall, I could hear voices coming from the other rooms. Doors lined the corridor and a shiver went down my spine as I made out what the voices were saying. They were distorted and definitely not human, but they sounded so inviting. So familiar. "Welcome to the Hotel California," cried the voices through their doors. I swallowed back the lump that was growing in my throat as I continued to follow the shape in front of me. Such a lovely place. Such a lovely face. Alarmed, I put one hand to my face. Could they see me? What were they talking about? They went on. "Plenty of room at the Hotel California. Any time of year. You can find it here." The shape ahead of me turned its head to look over at me, its eyes almost sympathetic. "Their minds are definitely twisted," it said in the flattest, most emotionless tone. "They've got the Mercedes-Benz. They've got a lot of pretty boys." I shuddered as the shape's voice swallowed all the air out of the hallway, almost making me gasp for breath. What was the shape talking about? What was this place? The California Hotel wasn't anywhere on the map that I had brought with me, was it? When was this place built? Rounding a right corner, I stopped in awe as a sprawling green courtyard was laid out in front of me. There was a large sparkling fountain in the center with the clearest water. The rose bushes and azaleas made a little barrier that lead all around the yard. There were other shapes dancing in the courtyard, I could see them all intertwined with their respective partners. Their movements were so fluid and well timed too, almost like it was all The shape stood just to my left and behind me, watching the dancing shapes with what looked like a wistful gleam in its cold yellow orange eyes. "Some dance to remember," it told me with a nod to the dancing couples. Some dance. Days flew by as I grew more and more used to this hotel. I became fond of the shape, even giving it a name. Shape often came around to my room to check on me, bring me food, and to make sure my room was as spotless as could be. Shape was like my own personal maid, and part of me enjoyed and resented it. One night, I called to the captain, "Captain, please bring me my wine." Heavy footsteps indicated the captain's arrival to my door and came inside holding a silver platter with a glass of red wine. It walked over to my bed and set the glass on the bedside table, eyeing me with slight interest. "We haven't had that spirit here since 1969. It chuckled and with a wink I nearly missed. Something about that sentiment was off-putting, but I simply shrugged it off and picked up my glass and sipped on the wine, all the while my eyes were fixated on the book I held in front of me. As I got into the book, I could hear the voices outside my room again. They were the same as the first day I arrived here, and they sounded in distress. Placing down my book and wine, I walked out of my room and into the looking up and down the verge, none of the doors were opened, but I could clearly hear the voices screaming and shouting incoherently. However, I could make out the same words they said to me when I first arrived in the "Welcome to the Hotel California." They hissed. "Such a lovely place. Such a lovely face." Then, their words morphed into something I had never heard them say before. living it up at the Hotel California. What a nice surprise. Bring your alibis. I backed away and retreated back to my room, closing door as my breaths came in, short and shallow. As I calmed myself down, I looked to the ceiling and nearly screamed. There were mirrors covering the ceiling, reflecting myself looking up at them. How had I not noticed them before? Looking to my bed, I blinked in alarm as the red wine had changed into pink champagne on the rocks. Suddenly, Shape appeared in the corner of my room, watching me with a look that almost resembled sadness and guilt. We're all prisoners here of our own device. It said and crossed the room, passing by me and opening the door. Looking back at me, it gestured to follow and left the room. With me in tow, Shape led me down the opposite way down the hallway, all the while the voices screeched and hollered. We walked swiftly and silently until we came upon a two-door room that was open, different than the other single-doored rooms along the hall. In the master's chamber, Shape said, nodding to the gaggle of unfamiliar shapes all huddled around something I couldn't see. Craning my neck, I could make out a snout and large tusks, but nothing more other than beady yellow eyes. They stab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast. Shape shook its head somberly and turned away, heading back the way we came as I stared on in a stunned silence. I had to get out of there soon. The following day, I quickly packed up my things into my backpack, stealing one of the pillows from the bed I'd used for nearly a week. Had it been that long? Had it been longer? I didn't have any way to tell time, so I could only assume that it had been a few days to a week. Leaving the room, I found the voices were quiet for once. Shape and Captain weren't around either. Was it going to be this easy? Hurrying down the hallway for the final time, the last thing I remembered was that I was running for the door at the end of the corridor. I had to get back to the place I was before Shape took me in. A black hand engulfed my wrist, and I let out a scream, whirling around to face whomever had grabbed me. It was one of the nightmen. "Relax," said the nightman. "We're programmed to receive." I saw Shape and Captain watching me from behind it, watching on with blank eyes. "You can check out anytime you like, but you can